Allegedly, Julio Jones will be traded, and this is what we have said since the beginning, because we have seen situations like this in the past where we automatically assume that it's going to be this high ransom to get this player on the team. Now, Matthew Stafford, okay, that was a huge trade, massive trade. A lot of things got traded. This has happened for quarterbacks in the past. I remember RG3 got picked up by the Washington football team, and they traded I think 4 number ones to the St. Louis Rams that became the LA Rams. I mean, there's been massive moves that have been made, but more often than not, it feels like it's skill positions. Guys get moved for far less than what you're expecting. Now, everybody's saying that it was going to be a first round to get Julio Jones, and that was allegedly what was being reported before the draft. The Atlanta Falcons were like, hey, you want Julio, it's going to have to be a first-round pick. It's going to have to be a first-round pick. Allegedly, nobody bid. Now there's mixed reports on whether or not it's a future first has been offered or if they're just contemplating that. But Jeff Darlington on Get Up yesterday said that you're probably looking at like a second or a third-round pick at this point. A second or a third-round pick. You know who was a second-round pick? Somebody that I think could be great or whatever?
Yeah.
Kyle Trask was a second-round pick to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. After drafting Kyle Trask, they signed Blaine Gabbert for another year contract. They still have Tom Brady for 2 years. They're just hoping that Kyle Trask works. A second-round pick, although very high draft pick, very important piece of, in the general manager's mind going forward, going to have a lot of chances because this is a high investment. A second-round pick, though, has failed a lot in the past. A third-round pick has failed a lot in the. I'm not saying Kyle Trask will fail. I'm just saying, look, Kyle Trask was drafted in the second round. They have Tom Brady and Blaine Gabbert. And Bruce Arians said Blaine Gabbert's the most underrated player in the NFL. So It's like they're getting second-round. People are still using second-round picks as like potential backups. Like, hey, we need security at a position. We need potential whatever. Julio Jones is not security. Julio Jones comes in second-round pick and is a guy for your team immediately. He's 32. Okay. And even to the haters that are saying, oh, he's only got a year or two left. It's like, cool. I don't care if I get Julio Jones for 1 year at Julio Jones and it's only going to cost me a second or third-round pick. Fucking good news. Because that third-round pick I draft could be great. Hey, there's been great players drafted in the third round. There is a lot more that have been absolutely dog shit and have never made it in the NFL. I don't understand how this works, why this works, but I guess this is why GMs are GMs and I'm not a GM. But how do you not pull the trigger on this immediately if it's a third round pick to get Julio Jones? What am I missing? Is it the $15 million? But we've learned that the $15 million guaranteed that he's owed next year and then the $2 million he's owed the year after that. Can they not restructure that and just kick that down the road like every other team has done in the salary cap that has been strapped up? What is the problem? I don't think I fully understand it. Ty, your thoughts?
Well, I don't know either because we were talking yesterday, and I feel like very recently, like his injury history has really been like brought up. But then I think Diggs looked at it and he was like, he really hasn't missed that much time. Like he missed a bunch of games last year, but like before that, like he's been healthy. So I don't know if it's just like, I mean. Everyone overvalues draft picks so much.
Why do they? Because because you're a fan, I guess, and you've seen like, hey, we drafted Aaron Rodgers in the first round. It's like, okay, you
Fair.
did. Yeah, that's a really good call. Hey, we drafted another success story in the first round. Remember the guys you love, those first rounders? It's like, okay, let's go back though. Let's look at all the first rounders that have kind of, fizzled out or second rounders that have fizzled out because only the bangers survive. And you just move along and don't even think about that. But there is a long list of people that everybody thought was going to change franchises that were drafted high, first round, second round, third round, and they did not. And that is, I think maybe, I look at it differently because of how many young players I've seen come into a locker room and be awesome and like, oh my God, the highlights are incredible from college. And then for whatever reason, just can't make it. For what the transition is not an easy one. It's not just something that everybody can work, whether it's physically, mentally, maybe it's the financial situation. As soon as you get a little money in your pocket, you change. But there's a lot of things that can go wrong. If you can get a proven guy.
Yes.
Why not? And that is just how I would do it. It's how Tampa's doing it. It's how Kansas City's doing it. It's how a lot of these teams are just building. It's like, hey, why are we rolling the dice on what could be when we have we know what is? I just don't fully understand it. Julio Jones is going to be traded, dude. This is going to happen for real. And they're saying it's a second or a third round, AJ. Your thoughts on that? Like, hey, why are we not sending 4 third rounders. Hey, you can take every third rounder this franchise has for the next 5 years, okay? We do not give a damn. Here you go. A little bit dramatic, I get it. But we have no idea if that third rounder is going to make the team. We have no clue. You know you're getting Julio. What is this real, and what are your thoughts on this, AJ?
I don't know if this is real, but didn't you? I don't know if this is old or debunked, but Diana Rossini said they have an offer for a first out there, right?
No, it was a future first, and they're discussing the several offers, including one. And we had this discussion in the office, actually. The way it was worded from Rossini, okay, you could read it from the standpoint of they have an offer on the table for a future first. Okay, the Atlanta Falcons have discussed several trade offers for Julio Jones, including an offer for a future first-round draft pick per sources. Now, are they discussing hypothetical trade offers where this is something that is, you know what I mean? Like, is this an actual offer that came? There's a sense around the league a trade could come down as early as next week. That's that June 1 date that we all knew was potentially going to happen. You know, like you could say this is a definite offer, but I went in with the mindset of like, are they discussing like what would we take, what we wouldn't take? You know what I mean? And I might be misreading that completely, and I can understand that. But if you got a future first at this point with Darlington saying it's maybe a second or a third, isn't that something you would want if you're playing the draft capital game? I don't know. I don't really fully understand the whole situation.
Well, none of us really know, I guess. I mean, I'm sure teams are wondering the same thing. Like if you're a GM and you're thinking of acquiring Julio, I guess how do you reach out and kind of feel out, test the waters into, hey, like what's it going to take to get this guy? And if you have a good relationship with GM and people, maybe you can do that. Like, hey, just come on, man. Let's find a way to get this done. What are you guys looking for?
Hey, what would you give for Julio Jones to join you? AJ, I want you, AJ Hawk, all-time leading tackler for the Green Bay Packers, yep. Super Bowl champion, has been in the locker room. How many years did you play?
11.
11 years in the amount of young players that were supposed to be franchise changers that have come into a locker room that AJ was in after 11 years and then immediately turned around and walked the fuck out, not doing a damn thing. Very, very high. What would you give up for Julio Jones?
Well, when I saw that they said it may take a second or third, I would do that instantly. Not even a question.
Both.
You can have both. Take a second, take my third next year. See ya. And if hopefully I can fit his contract under the cap, whatever I have. If not, hopefully you can talk with him and his agent before the trade is done. Like, hey, we just need to restructure. You probably get the same. Maybe we'll move some to bonuses and all of that. Play the old cap gymnastics you have too. But second or third, easy. And if they said, hey, a first and a third, I'd probably do that too.
Yeah, me too. And by the way, if it was second and third this year and a third next year, take that too. Sure. I think most ex-players have the same thoughts as you and I. And I think it's strictly because of what our friends who thought they were going to lose their jobs because a young player was hyped up to come in and be whatever. And you know what happened? Old tried and true just stayed there and that person fizzled out. The amount of times that happens, it doesn't get talked about. It doesn't get talked about. Even if it's somebody that you know, it kind of fizzles out of the news cycle because there's so much other shit to talk about. I think people forget about how many times draft picks fail. And it is a lot. And that is, I think the draft cycle does a great job of hyping up all these players. And these players deserve to be hyped up for what they've accomplished in high school and college and everything like that. But then there's not really much coverage afterwards of the guys that just absolutely stink, unless you're the biggest bust of all time you're talked about or potentially in the conversation. But if it's just like fizzled out, it's like, is that a win? If you could get Julio Jones on your team, is it somebody that just like played 3 years but kind of just fizzled out or whatever? Good player, good guy, not franchise changer like Julio potentially could be. I think a lot of ex-players view it like you and me, but man, I get a lot of tweets from fans and coaches that are like, well, you can't pay that for a 32-year-old. It's like, why? Is that the
only knock? That's what I'm trying to figure out. What's the only knock on Julio is he's 32, and they say he may have some durability issues, right?
Which Diggs, by the way, did some research. The durability issues, that's a fugazi.
Overblown.
Yeah, also, he's also one of the toughest receivers, and he's very, very physical and a tone setter, too. That dude, when he catches the ball and runs through defenders, like the whole team is energized. Man.
Yeah, and he's not trying to, just survive. He's number 2 wide receiver in the history of the NFL for yards in the first 10 years, and he's number 1 in the NFL's history for average yards per game over a 10-year career or whatever. It's just, I don't understand where, like Chris Ballard, all right? He'll probably see this clip. I think he has family that potentially watches and neighbors that watch, and I assume a lot of people in the building that potentially watch are going to say, I have a lot of respect for Chris Ballard. A lot. After talking to him as a human, his
Don't
vision.
start it like this. This is like saying with all due respect. How are you gonna trash it?
I just want to make sure he knows while he's watching what I'm about to say that how I feel about him remains. Okay, that whole thing. But what is he doing?